Oops.
I'd have to say I did nothing.
So, well, we won't record the one-on-ones. I suppose that's actually a good reminder. You're going to go into a private confidential space, and we'll come back in a moment, but this is really just to underline that we want to hear your voice today, and giving you a chance to connect with someone else is really to begin that process. So you're about to be given an invitation. Share that time, please, about 60 seconds each. Say where you're from and what you're hoping to get out of the community practice. And we'll see you in 2 minutes. So click join. Emily, I am not joining one of those breakouts, so you might want to make sure someone's not missing out. Great. Cool.
I didn't either. Was that?
So just let Emily work out the two people who are lost by themselves and put them together.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Great. Steph, do you want to, well, you'll be ready with your slide. Maybe it doesn't need to go up straight away, but just.
Yeah, I just, let me just share screen, make sure. Is that all good?
Yep, that looks terrific.
See the slides, cool.
And still recording, just so the people in this room know that.
What's that?
We're still recording what we're talking about, so just so that you know. Emily, when you have a second, do you want to pause that recording?
Yeah, I will. Sorry, guys.
Thanks. I think we've got everyone back. It's a pleasure today to introduce Stephanie, who'll be speaking to us about her experience using Wicked Lab. Stephanie is the senior lecturer at Edith Cowan University in Western Australia. She's first and foremost a nutritionist. She's worked in the area for 16 years with children, families, remote Aboriginal communities, government and non-government organisations. She has a PhD that focused on food security and diet quality in rural and remote WA, Western Australia, I should say, for our international guests, which is an enormous tract of land that takes up a lot of Australia's continent. So it is a very vast and diverse geographical region. It's shaped a lot of her place-based research subsequently that's focused here in Australia, but also internationally. She's really demonstrates complex systems thinking in practice. And that's one thing that really drives her, which you'll see in her presentation today, that her work in academia is very much creating useful tools and helping local food initiatives and systems change across wherever she can. And hopefully today is extending her networks. And we have, great conversations fueled as a result. We'll have a bit of Q&A after this presentation, which I'll facilitate. So please raise your hand or put some questions in the chat as we go. They're welcome, but we'll go to the end of the presentation, I think, before we have that time. And then we're going to open it up to a conversation in smaller groups so that you can have deeper conversations about what surprised you about this presentation, about the use of Wicked Lab as a tool, and what do you want to learn more about? So this is our first community practice meeting. So hearing those ideas from you in smaller groups and then coming back to the large group to share them is really what we want to get out of this 1 hour. So even though it's 4 a.m. in England, I think it's a useful hour, hopefully at 4 a.m. So you'll be feeling revitalized and ready for the day ahead. So let's start with, I'll throw it to you, Stephanie, if you want to share your slides, which to anticipate the question coming, these will be shared afterwards, so that you don't have to make hasty notes while it's going along. Thanks, Steph.
Great, thanks so much, Nick, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So I thought I would just start by briefly giving you a little bit of my insights into my career so far. And Nick has already given you a bit of a broad brush overview, but I really love working with rural and remote communities. And I think it's so important to me to help support them to advocate for healthy food systems and greater food security for themselves. So I have really been so lucky with my work that has gone across, as Nick said, it's at 2.5 million square kilometres and so much diversity in every region in WA. And I've really been able to see that through my roles as a practitioner, as a nutritionist, working with communities. So I have had that really in the forefront of my mind when I've been working on the project that I'm going to be talking with you today about. Before I get too much into the project, I just wanted to talk to you about the lens we used when we were working on our systemic innovation project with Wicked Lab. So this is about food security determinants, really, our approach. And we were looking through the lens of food security, or food and nutrition security, really being about physical, social, and economic access to nutritious food. So it's that meets the dietary needs and food preferences of people. More contemporary, views of food security have been talking about 6 pillars, or 6 dimensions, really looking at food availability, so where food outlets are located, promotion of food access, so looking at, say, transport to outlets or community transport and buses that might take people to be able to buy their food, or the food utilisation dimension, where it might be about nutrition education and cooking programs. Agency, really about people's voice or their ability to be part of shaping the food systems that they are consuming through. And then sustainability, so making sure that the food system is really preserving the environment for future generations too. Of course, the stability pillar is really important, as we've seen over the last several years. There's been the pandemic, there's been cyclones, weather variability, political instability. So all of these factors together are really shaping someone's food security. And really these determinants were the underpinning factors that we were looking at, or projects really that were meeting one or more of these determinants of food security, were those projects or initiatives that we were really keen to get to know a little bit more about through using Wicked Lab's approach. So this was our food community methodology, which we used in our pilot. So we conducted a pilot in the southwest region of WA, which is only about 23,000 square kilometres, so not so large, but it really was just testing the waters to see, was this approach, or could this approach be useful in practice? And I did stumble across the Wicked Lab website and saw that they offered training, and I saw that it hadn't, from what I could see, hadn't been put into practice yet in Australia. So I was a bit unsure as to whether this could work for us on the ground, but I decided to undertake the training and then pilot it in the region that I live in the southwest, to see how it would go in practice. So it was really testing the waters of this approach. So we started with the form stage. So those of you who might be already aware of the Systemic Innovation Lab approach and the FEMLAS stages, I won't go into too much detail here, but essentially we added our own tweaks on Wicked Lab's approach. So there's the stage 1 form: explore, map, learn, address, and share. And some little tweaks or differences we added to it along the way was, in consultation with people, we decided we really needed a project launch or a real kickoff to get the project happening, build people's awareness around what we were hoping to do. We also workshopped a project logo with people in our community. So that was really helpful for them to help work on a tagline and help us start that visioning process. We also talked about initiatives that we all know about that might be addressing one or more of those determinants of food security. We talked about what we wanted our region to look like in terms of making sure that everyone has access to affordable, good quality, nutritious food, and how that could be, come about. And then we moved to the explore stage. So we conducted our exploration through interviews. So it was labour intensive, but we decided, for the sake of the pilot, we really needed to do that process to get a sense of what people were doing, what they were working on in terms of their food initiatives, who they were working with, and then talk them through the language around the different characteristics that we were looking to determine if their initiative possessed or not. We followed the map and learn stages pretty along the lines of Wicked Lab's approach. So that's where we uploaded interview information onto the tool for systemic change to give us what they call a transition card, or it's really a matrix of different initiatives down the y-axis, and then along the bottom looking at all of the different 36 characteristics for system change. So you really can see that grid, the colourful grid, to see which characteristics different initiatives were possessing in their daily life or the way that they ran their work. And then the learn stage was where we unpacked that a bit and we looked for windows of opportunity, we called it. So we were putting our spin on the language rather than gaps, because obviously some people were volunteers running their own initiatives out of their normal work hours. We didn't want to be saying, oh, you've got all these gaps in the work that you do. We wanted to say, look, this is the great work you're doing, but here are some windows of opportunity that we could work with you potentially to strengthen. And then the stage 5 was address, and that's where we looked at an action planning forum where we brought people back together that have participated in the interviews. We prepared individual reports to feed back to them their windows of opportunity, the aspects or the characteristics that their initiative possessed, and then provided some templates around potential action planning that we could do together with them. So we did select specific focus areas, because I'm sure you're aware that the Wicked Lab approach, they've got 9 different focus areas, which I'll show you another slide in a minute about. But we thought it might be overwhelming for people to really try to unpack all of the 9 focus areas in that one day workshop. So we selected some focus areas where there were lots of windows of opportunity and also the potential ability to fill those and to strengthen those together. And then stage 6 was share. So that's where you want to share the results back out through the network. And so we sought and received funding to build a purpose-built website, which is called Food Community. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But we were able to share the map through the Food Community website. People said that they wanted to know who was doing what. So we then located a connect section so people could see who was doing what in terms of their food projects and whereabouts they were. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that website in detail later. But that was a really helpful mechanism for us to be able to share information out through the network. So I just want to reinforce the importance of language, and it is a work in progress for us. It has been, I will say, quite challenging over the journey in terms of really taking this quite theoretical academic language to make it realistic and practical for people who are working in a variety of different food initiatives. So in terms of the focus area 1, create a disequilibrium state. I remember someone from a local government saying, what does that even mean? And so this was where we were trying to work with people initially to try to tweak the language, not lose the integrity of it, but try to make it a little bit easier for a variety of people to understand. And I will say that as we're evolving the project to the new phase that we're in now, we definitely have better language, I think, that would be more user-friendly for people. But this is the language we had when we're working with the pilot. So our terminology that we were working with people around was shaking up the current way of working. So it's around trying to get disruption happening and try to really challenge the status quo. And you can see there's some other examples. So helping information to get spread through the system rather than enable information flows. And then sort of looking at really this is the community government interface. So really where do the community organisations work with local governments, say, for example, and how can we increase or foster the connection between them in the work that we're doing to support them to help fill in different system change characteristics within these focus areas. So there's the unplanned exploration, where it might be creating government policies that community has a voice in, and towards that planned exploitation, where the government is actually using that community knowledge and innovation, such as a project register on their website that lists all different initiatives that are supporting determinants of food security, for example. So visualizing the system change aspects here, this is our transition card or solution ecosystem, or we called it our project map. And we were talking to people about the fact that, and I know you can't see all of the small writing, but these are all of the different system change characteristics, the 36 system change characteristics that are embedded within 9 different focus areas. And here are the different initiatives that we captured within our pilot project. So we had 52 initiatives that were addressing or working on one or more of the determinants of food security, and they're listed down the side there. And then they fall within these 9 different focus areas. And you can see that really that disruption or shaking up the current way of working, lots of initiatives possessed a lot of those characteristics. But then down this end, this is really that community government connection or community government interface is really where there are lots of windows of opportunity, or were windows of opportunity to really harness and strengthen. And so just to give you another example here, so this is characteristic 2.5, so establish network linkages. So an example of that particular characteristic, so that column there, was create connections with other projects, groups, or individuals who are addressing food security in the area. So that's just to let you know what that specific characteristic was about. So then we wanted to measure, okay, so what are the areas we need to strengthen? And the ones highlighted in the red boxes are the ones that we chose to focus on in the action planning workshop, which was in the address stage of the process. And this one was around, say, creating language or symbols or branding or change champions or role models for the cause. So really looking at strengthening those kinds of aspects or characteristics. And then these ones, again, are the community government interface. So it's really about how can we connect government and community better through more participation, for example, on committees, or it could be community organisations communicating with their local government more about their project and what they do, and or helping have a voice in their strategic plan or their community health and wellbeing plan, for example. So these are the ones that we worked on in the action planning forum. And then we created the action plans together with the participants that they, in theory, could go away and then work on, and use the food community website as a sounding board or some information or supporting mechanisms for them. And I know I said I'll talk about the food community website a little bit later, but just something important to mention here was we were working with the Public Health Advocacy Institute, and they have a Pathway to Policy course. It's a free online course, and they tailored that for our food community participants. And it was really helping to strengthen these particular focus areas, because it was providing participants with information around how they could change their language or enhance the language that they use working with government, for example, or get their branding and their image out there. And so it was these kinds of strategies that were supporting people to make those enhancements to their initiatives. Now, the little black boxes around those characteristics are 6 months after the action planning forum, we re-interviewed a section or subsection of the participants to find out what changes they might have made, whether they made changes that reflected their action plans, whether they made additional changes or enhancements to their work. And so these squares or black boxes around those initiative characteristics are the ones that have been filled in as a result of after those 6 months. So, and I will say there were only 15 people or 15 of those initiatives covered out of the 52 when we did the re-interviewing. So we didn't re-interview everyone because we didn't have capacity to do that, but we just wanted to see a sample and be able to see whether there were any changes observed over that period of time. And you can see that there were changes made within those focus areas that we worked on at the Action Planning Forum, but then there were changes outside of that as well. And of course, we can't claim that our process has been the sole thing happening to make all these changes occur, but it's just interesting to be able to see what has happened over that period of time. And really, I think, speaks to the fact that this is an adaptive system and it's always changing over time. So some exemplar changes that people talked about that they had made in those 6 months between the Action Planning Forum and the re-interviewing that we did, they said that some people said that they undertook professional development, which helped catalyse new funding opportunities and partnerships with other organisations. One participant talked about the creation of a new community network, looking at specifically food availability and food accessibility. Someone talked about facilitating local committee meetings with government and community, so really trying to connect the two together more. Someone talked about collaboration, so trying to reduce duplication of different services that are going on that might be trying to work on one or more of the determinants of food security. More consultation by local government, trying to amplify advocacy to local government as well. So you can really start to see the pattern here in terms of there are lots of different activities that are going on that are trying to connect community and government a bit more, and then trying to encourage particularly elected members to use community ideas. So that led to a local government sharing information about different food initiatives. So this was the food community website that I've mentioned briefly throughout the presentation, and it is a place where we work on translating food security research into infographics. They're often just one pages, and you can see some examples there. So we try to use icons or visual aspects where possible to reduce the text, but it makes it more accessible for people who might not be able to get into academic journals, for example, and they can be easily shared. I've taken those back to communities and talked to them about how they might like to use them. For example, different types of infographics that might have been used in clinics or stores around the state as well. There's different fact sheets on topics, various topics of food security, case studies where there's video and also written case studies about people that are working on initiatives that have been captured in the process. Webinars, so there's I think 12 webinars or 9 webinars now. They've been viewed I think almost 12,000 times collectively, so people are starting to watch these things more and comment to me that they have been quite useful in terms of increasing their understanding of different aspects of food security. There's the advocacy training course I mentioned through the Public Health Advocacy Institute. There's a Connect platform. So you can see down the bottom here, this is where we're looking at initiatives, locating initiatives on a map. So this is still taking shape, and there's been obviously most in the Southwest region, but now we're looking at expanding out. Hopefully that will be more populated across the rest of the state. And the great feature about a number of these aspects of the website is that people can actually add their own, so they don't have to wait for us to add a pin drop about their project. They can link through to their own website, and same with the case studies that comes through to us to capture the information, put it on our template, and then we can upload it there. Events, obviously this website was created sort of, just as we were going into COVID, and so it hasn't been as populated as it would like to be, but that will hopefully start to take shape a bit more over time. And then groups, so this is an area where people could come together and have as a virtual networking space. And I should say with the website, we do have an area, some content that's accessible by anyone, but then we also have a registration area which is free, which has access to the full content. And the purpose of that is just so that we can evaluate the website annually, just to make sure it's still meeting people's needs and to find out what else they might like added to it to enhance it. So that's really just the purpose of that registration. So some lessons learnt or shared between some people who have completed Wicked Lab training has been really useful. And I just wanted to acknowledge the teams that I have worked with from other areas of not WA, but Australia, because that's been so valuable along our journey to be able to chat with each other and to unpack what we might be having trouble with or challenging, and really share some lessons learned that we can benefit from in terms of our own journeys. So I was working with the city of Onkaparinga, and we talked about lessons learned in their journey. We talked about potentially having a project launch in our pilot, which was the purpose of bringing people together, which we ended up doing, and I felt was such a valuable part of the whole process. And people did comment that it was really setting the scene and helping people understand the vision for the project and how they could get involved with it. And then the Greening Marion team, I really wanted to acknowledge as well, from South Australia, because they've been so helpful. I was initially, when they started their journey, talking to them about what we'd learned around language and how we would change it and evolve it. And then they talked to me about what they'd found through when they went through their process. They've shared really willingly their interview guide with me, which has had some great work on it in terms of the language and making sure that people are really understanding all aspects of the characteristics. And then their pilot report's been quite useful as well with our new plans too. So we have been really fortunate to receive funding this year to now scale up our Southwest Food Community pilot project to all other WA regions. So this is going to happen over the next 3 years. And it's really exciting because we're going to be able to create these food communities in the other regions. And so it's going to be great not only to see what types of initiatives we can uncover, because we know the diversity within and between regions. So we're going to be able to see this whole system of different types of projects that are addressing one or more determinants of food security. So it's going to be really interesting to see how diverse and the types of projects, but also how people might already be working together with others, because we know that there's different types of network groups happening in the various regions, and some might be really well connected and working in collaboration together, whereas others, it could probably be more supported, and this could be one project that could help support that too. So that's what's going to be happening over the next 3 years. We are really conscious though that a one size doesn't fit all approach is not going to work, and so we want to work, we will be working with people on the ground to make sure that if we need to contextualize parts of the approach for that local region, then we will do that. So we're working with an advisory group that is comprised of people from across the regions, and then we're going to be locally contextualizing aspects of the approach for them too. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this other than to say this is our way of working that we'll be taking across the regions. So again, stage 1 will be formed. That's where we're at now at the very beginning. So we're forming our advisory group. We've got staff that are commencing in a couple of weeks, and then we're already starting to populate some initiative that we've already uncovered through various means. And so we're going to be creating the databases, which will then explore further through our interviews. We're going to be obviously mapping as we have done before, but the exciting new development is that the tool for systemic change now can be incorporating a link with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that's an addition to the interview guide that I think will be really exciting to be able to turn on that feature then, once we've included that in the interviews, to see how initiatives might be contributing towards the SDGs. And there's a great partnership analysis network function too that we're looking forward to utilising. I did teach myself how to use Gephi to map the network and spent quite a long time on that, but it's really good to know that that's also a feature that we're going to be able to turn on and use to see how well connected our network is. And then we'll go through the other stages, hopefully as planned, but really be responsive to the regions and to see where they're at, how they might need support, and how we can work with them on the ground in the action planning forum. And then again, really utilising that food community website. We will have different regional tabs for the different regions too. So just looking at, in terms of how we might have overcome some challenges. So it was really important for us to work with funders over time, or to really engage them. So we did have several meetings, presentations with the funder over the years, responding to their suggestions of how we would need to display the innovation, or demonstrate the innovation, the gap that we might be filling in the state. I did meet and present to various state government departments, had lots of meetings with local governments, following up, social media. So, and then with the community organisations, so we used a lot of traditional media to highlight different parts of where we were at in the process, emails and regular workshops to feed back our findings to people, and of course the website. And then with supporter organisations, you can see we've used a variety of different platforms to keep people engaged and informed about our process. Some challenges were that, and the quote is about, so is your project going to decrease prevalence of food insecurity across WA? And I think it sometimes can be challenging. You know, we're saying, well, we're not measuring rates of food insecurity. We're not looking at an individual person or a household. We're looking at across the community at initiatives that are working on one or more determinants of food security. So it's that determinants approach, and we're looking at supporting people through that mechanism. So it was sometimes hard to really communicate that this is a system of projects. We're not looking at one individual intervention and focusing in on that. It's about a collective approach. It was a risk of uncharted waters in terms of I hadn't seen this approach be implemented in practice, and so we didn't know how it would work in practice, and certainly there's lots of lessons learnt. And then communicating with government, so there's so many different competing priorities, and why is this project important for them to focus their staff time on? So linking to strategic documents was quite important there. And then of course the language around the community. What parts of a project do you talk about that's so complex? I mean, how do you say a high level overview in a nutshell about what it's about? That has been a challenge as well. And then of course funding too. So thank you so much. Just wanted to provide some links there to some papers that we've published. Obviously there's the website, the Food Community website, for you to have a look at. My email address there too if you'd like to ask any further questions beyond today's session. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephanie. I'll pause for a moment there because I think that is it's like drinking from the fire hydrant. I think taking in that presentation, you've achieved so much, and it's so exciting to see the project start, succeed, and then scale and get government support to go around the cycle again. It's quite thrilling, and something I think everyone around this table is probably interested to find out how can we do that. And really, I think that goes to, where do we start? And please people, this is a chance to raise your hand or put a comment in the chat if you'd like to ask questions. So we'll just have time now, I think, for a good 5-10 minutes for that. I see, Danielle, you've got a question fairly specific about what you use to map, what software or platforms drive your map of your site. Is there a short answer to that question?
Do you mean the Google map where the actual pin drops of projects were, or do you mean the website structure itself?
Platform where people can add themselves to the map, or is that just Google pin drops?
Probably need to talk with our software developer, website developer, more about that, but I'm not sure how that was built in terms of the functionality for them to enter their own. But essentially, from what I understand, it's just a template for information in different boxes that they can put in. But yeah, I can certainly take that question and feed back to you if you need more specific information about how that was built.
I was just curious, so thank you.
Oh, no problem.
So I might ask a question then, going back to, let's say, the start of the process, which is collecting information. It was really interesting to hear you talk about how you did one cycle of interviews and then had another one. And so I'm curious about, like, when you started, did you have a sense of scale and the growth that you would like to do, and deciding where to put your limits on the project from the start, or is that something that sort of shifted over time?
No, I had no idea how many initiatives we would find or how long it would take. I did obviously have a very modest budget and had 2 research assistants helping me do the interviews, but we didn't know how many we'd find. And I will say that 52 initiatives we know doesn't capture all of them in the Southwest region. It's really just a portion that we could find at the time. But yeah, it really was an evolution over time. But I think thinking back, we did look throughout that phase and think, okay, so we really do need to have interviews done by, say, the end of October. We've got to cut it off somewhere, because we need to then look at how we can plan for the subsequent phases. So, but really, I think at that point in time, yeah, we probably would have needed to do a lot more work to start trying to uncover more initiatives thereafter. I think we'd really had as many as we could find so far in our databases, and really the bookings for the interviews were sort of starting to trickle off. But yes, we did need to cap it in terms of a time frame.
And there's a question from Sandy, which is again about interviewing. How did you prime people before your interview? So how did you introduce them to complexity approach, and how much info was required to begin with? Then second question is, how long did you take per interview, and did you structure it as a conversation or go through, how did you go through the 36 points to ensure coverage?
Sure. So in terms of how we primed people, we talked to them over the phone about what the project was about. We obviously sent them an information letter, which described it a little bit more in detail. We had a number of people come to our launch, so they were able to see a presentation and be part of that discussion there as well. So we were giving them a background as to what we were hoping to achieve from the project, and what we're interested in uncovering during their interviews. And the interviews were, as I said, done via telephone mostly. And so they were really following it was a structured, semi-structured interview guide. We did have questions that linked to each of the 36 characteristics. So we had some prompts as well. So they might have been exemplars, what we meant by that particular question. So we had those prompts or exemplars from memory for every question. So just to make sure that people were understanding what we were asking of them. And of course, they had the opportunity to ask a question if they didn't quite understand, what we were looking for. We would then provide an extra example. So we tried to make sure that we had those exemplars or prompts included.
Really fantastic stuff to start our community of practice to talk about these practical things. Kate, you were first to raise your hand. Do you want to go with your question?
Sure, thank you. Fantastic presentation and project. Thanks, Steph, very much for that. I have a million questions, but I'm going to restrict myself to just one, which is a very broad question. Can you say some more about that piece where you were communicating, particularly to funders, perhaps to government, about, I guess, mapping change at the system level rather than having them want to keep going back down to the project level?
Yes, so we did. I often used PowerPoint presentations when I went along to different meetings, because I just found that map or the transition card was something that they were quite interested in, to see the sort of sea of different or portfolio of different interventions. So yes, that was a helpful talking piece to show them, well, what we've already seen in this pilot, there's so many different activities going on, and we're looking at trying to strengthen and work together with them to strengthen their work that they're doing. So, and I think it was also talking them through the process. It wasn't just, okay, a one-off chat with someone. We were trying to work in collaboration with them over that time. So those were the things that were quite helpful. And then talking to them about the longer term plan in terms of what we wanted to do to support them through the website. So that was also something that people found would be quite useful for the network, and really as a connecting mechanism for the network too.
Thanks so much.
But just answering lots of questions, being available to go to presentations for different teams that was something that, yes, I found was helpful. I kind of jumped whenever I got the chance to go and talk about it with someone. So yeah.
Just Nick, a half a little follow-up point. What I'm struggling with ourselves is a way of doing that flat on paper. So I think your point around engaging with people and having the conversation, which is actually an education process, is probably really valuable. Were you able to get it down on a piece of paper and have that be satisfactory for those more linear?
Yeah. So I actually had multiple versions of a document that I tailored for different types of groups, stakeholder groups. And say, for example, if it was local governments, I was trying to connect that to public health plans, or state government, I was talking about different strategic plans and how it linked to that. And so, and community organizations, I was linking to other things. And so I would try to highlight or focus on different points that they found relevant for them. So yes, I did have documents that I also sent to them.
Fantastic.
And really talk to people along the way from those different groups to find out what was most useful for them.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Great questions. Renee, do you want to ask your question? Thanks.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks, Steph, for a great presentation. My name's Renee. I'm from Health and Wellbeing Queensland, which is a prevention agency of the Queensland Government. And our team is leading the development of a remote food security strategy and action plan. So I see a lot of relevance of this work and a lot of potential of this approach. I suppose my question is, in your project, you were kind of seeking out the work of other organisations. Whereas when I compare it to what we're doing, we are kind of a central connecting point. And some of our initiatives are owned by us. Some of them are owned by other people. Some of them are shared between us and others. Do you think that there is potential or value in using this tool as a kind of accountability or transparency or report card mechanism to report on actions that we may do underneath a strategy from our central organisation, noting that some of those, we wouldn't necessarily follow the same process as an interview because we're the owners and we understand it. So is there issues with objectivity around that, and how would you manage that? And then, but you would have to kind of take a joint approach for other initiatives that other organisations are leading.
Yeah, great question. I think, yes, it could absolutely be used to map not only your initiatives, but others as well. I think in terms of the objectivity, well, I mean, I guess it always is subjective, even if you're interviewing other people about their work anyway, isn't it? In terms of it's what they've, say, the program leaders think about their work and how they might possess those particular characteristics too. But I wonder if, you could use different strategies for collecting that information, be it a survey or an interview or a focus group. So you can also, if there's an organisation that runs, say, several initiatives, include them in a focus group type discussion or a group interview, I should say, to collect information about the initiatives. But I would say it would be really valuable to measure those activities or initiatives. I think it's a really helpful tracking tool, and then be able to see if you are making adaptations to those initiatives, how that might change as well. I wonder if Emily, I know Emily's online, I wonder if she wants to add to that.
I definitely do. Sorry, I was just getting ready to set up some rooms. So the answer is yes. And Renee, I can send you a case study of a South Australian department, the South Australian SAFECOM, so South Australian Fire and Emergency Commission, that were taking a portfolio approach. So they were the lead organisation. A number of the activities were done and owned by the government department leading the work, and they were taking a portfolio approach. They also worked with other stakeholders as well. So I will send you a case study that will help all distracted by setting up rooms and Nick sending me messages about 6 minutes to go. But I've got excellent resources that I'll share with everyone in this follow-up email about taking a portfolio approach.
That would be great. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to go into breakout rooms just for 6 minutes because that's, I think, a good use of the time we've got left.
Yeah.
So this is a chance for you to just reflect on, what surprised you with the presentation and what might be the areas you want to focus on in this community practice moving forward. We'll have just enough time to hear back from you coming out of those rooms so that we finish right on the dot. So hopefully, Emily, you're going to send some invitations in a moment, and we'll see you again very soon. Thanks, Emily.
Done. I'm going to pause back.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you've had an inspiring hour together today. It was a fantastic presentation from Stephanie, and hopefully you've had great ideas now and reflections. We do only have 2 minutes left in our hour, and Emily is about to post a link to the Slack where we want this conversation to continue and where we want to help build those collective notes of great ideas, of the aha moments that perhaps you felt listening to Stephanie, but also in the discussions you just had. I certainly love the idea of a public launch to really engage a large group of people and motivate them to get more involved. That's one big takeaway I took from this. But if there are people who are primed and ready to share something from their conversation, I'll pause for a moment if people want to take to the floor and just tell us what happened in their breakout room. I'd love to hear a voice.
Sue, I'm going to unmute you, Sue. You just need to unmute yourself, Sue.
Yes, thank you. You know what I'm like with technology. Just to say, as a confession, we have been using Wicked Labs for some time now, using our small projects. Steph, absolutely fantastic. I'm going to my research and development today would be rob and duplicate with pride. That has really resonated with what I'm trying to do with stakeholders. We've done ours slightly differently because we're testing Wicked Labs. I think the main thing is not to be afraid of it, and it is doable. It's not just about food, food security. We're using it on community initiatives. I've even tweaked it to challenge our local authority about committees and structures. And then I shifted it to focus areas 6 to 9, Emily? Yes, 6 to 9. So making sure, looking at the direction of their policies across the board, across our local authority. So, so that's like, I would give some feedback on it, but don't be afraid. It's not that scary when you see the ecosystem map. But yeah, really good session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Great. Thanks, Sue. Fantastic to hear more about your experience in the next community of practice. So Emily's put in the chat, oh no, you haven't?
Oh, I think I have. Oh, Catherine Kent got the private message. Jesus. You would never know that I run a tech business. There we go.
So look, this is the place where you can connect and the conversation can continue. So please jump on board, share your aha moments from today. Also tell us what was the conversation about, what you want the community of practice to discuss more. In future, we'll have a format that will have a presentation, but plenty of time for conversation to take place. But I think as a launch of the community of practice, this has been a fantastic event. And thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your wisdom and your experiences.
Thank you, Nick. And I'm just going to chime in just lastly. Thank you, Stephanie, for your commitment and fearless contribution to taking what was, you know, as you said, when we started together. So for everyone, just in terms of timeframes, that was 2018. So we've been working, this has been going for 4 years. So we're right at the beginning of our journey. Thank you for believing in us, Steph. Thank you for being a great partner. And Nick, Senvik, thank you for being the partner that's going to develop this community of practice for us. We are grateful to everyone for their time, and we will have another one of these sessions in September. So I'll post that in the Slack for everyone that's there.
Thanks, everyone.
See everyone.
Huzzah.
All right. Hi, Emily.
Bye, Sue.
Hope you get some sleep, or I don't know, short day.
Oh no, it's too hot for that. But no, really well done. And the use of language, Steph, just because when I go to people and say da, 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 and they're like, what?
I know. Don't worry, I've been in those meetings too.
Yeah. You think you're talking to the really high-powered people, and it's like, yeah, and what does that mean, Sue? So yeah, so absolutely.